My 4-year-old son came running to me crying, holding his little hand. He looked scared and hurt. When I asked what happened, he said it burned. I looked at his hand. It was red and looked painful. My wife came in and said it was nothing serious. She told me he touched some warm water while playing near the sink. She acted like it wasn't a big deal. Let me tell you what happened next. Please stay with me. And if you're a parent, please listen closely. This story might help you protect your child someday. But something felt wrong. My son looked too scared for something so small. And the way he looked at my wife, it didn't sit right with me. I asked him again what happened. He whispered, "Mommy said don't tell." That's when my heart sank. Why would he say that if it was just an accident? I told my wife I was taking him to the hospital. She said I was overreacting and that it wasn't necessary. She tried to stop me, saying I was making a scene. But I didn't listen. I took my son to the car and drove straight to the ER. At the hospital, they checked his hand quickly. The nurse and doctor looked at it and asked how it happened. I told them what my wife said. He touched warm water. The doctor frowned. He said the injury looked more serious than that. He told me this kind of burn usually happens with boiling water or steam, not just warm water. He looked me in the eyes and asked if everything was okay at home. I said yes, but I wasn't sure anymore. Then he asked if I felt my son was safe. That question hit hard. I never thought I'd hear something like that. I told the doctor my son said his mom told him not to tell. The doctor became very serious. He told me this didn't look like an accident. He said I should be careful and pay attention. He didn't accuse anyone directly, but I could tell he was trying to warn me. I left the hospital feeling confused and scared. I didn't know what to think. Part of me still wanted to believe it was nothing, just a mistake. But another part of me couldn't forget my son's face. And those words. Mommy said don't tell. I knew something wasn't right, and I had to find out what was really going on. The doctor looked at my son's hand for a long time. He didn't rush. He checked the redness, the skin, the shape of the burn. Then he looked at me and said, "This doesn't look like something caused by just warm water." He was calm but firm. He explained that this type of burn usually comes from something hotter, boiling water, steam, or even a hot object. He said the pattern didn't match what I had described. I didn't know what to say. I repeated what my wife told me, that our son had touched warm water while playing at the sink. The doctor listened but didn't seem convinced. He asked me if anything like this had happened before. I said no, never. This was the first time. Then he asked a question that made me pause. Has your son ever come home with bruises or injuries you couldn't explain? I shook my head, but my mind started to go back. There were times he had small marks, nothing that seemed serious. I always believed kids get bruises from playing. I never questioned it. The doctor nodded slowly. He wasn't accusing anyone, but his tone changed. He told me that if I had any doubts, I should start paying attention to what happens at home. He said some signs are small, changes in behavior, fear around certain people, or odd injuries. He told me to stay alert. I still didn't want to believe it. I told him my wife would never hurt our son. I said she's been stressed lately, but she's a good mother. I felt like I had to defend her, even though a part of me was already starting to doubt. The doctor didn't argue. He just said, sometimes people hide things, even from those closest to them. Just watch carefully. I nodded, but inside I felt like I was being torn in two. I trusted my wife. We'd been together for years. I never imagined she could do anything to hurt our son. But the way my son acted earlier, the fear, the whisper, the words don't tell, kept coming back to me. As we left the hospital, the doctor pulled me aside. He handed me a card with a number on it. If anything else happens, or if you notice anything strange, call this number. It's confidential. I put the card in my pocket. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to think. On the drive home, my son fell asleep in the back seat. I kept glancing at him through the mirror. His little hand was bandaged, resting on his chest. He looked peaceful, but I couldn't stop thinking about the doctor's words. That night, everything felt different. My wife asked how it went at the hospital. I told her the doctor gave us some cream and said to keep the hand clean. I didn't mention anything else. I just watched her closely. She acted normal. Too normal. Something inside me had shifted. I didn't know if I was ready to believe what the doctor was hinting at, but I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to pay attention. I had to protect my son, no matter what that meant. After that visit to the hospital, I started watching my wife different. I didn't tell her what the doctor had said. I didn't mention the number he gave me. I just kept quiet and started paying attention. At first, everything seemed normal. She cooked dinner, played with our son, laughed at the TV. But when I really looked, I started to notice things I hadn't seen before. When I asked small questions about the burn, she gave long answers, too long. She repeated herself, added details that didn't line up. One time she said he touched the pot. Another time she said the faucet. Her stories kept changing. I started asking simple questions just to see how she reacted. Each time she got defensive fast. Why are you asking me that? Or do you not believe me? I always said I was just trying to understand, but inside I was starting to feel that something wasn't right. One evening, I was helping my son get ready for bed. As I helped him into his pajamas, I noticed him staring at the bedroom. I asked him what was wrong. He looked at me and said quietly, "Is Mommy's friend coming again?" I asked, "What friend?" He just shook his head and said, "The one who makes her yell." That was all he said. I didn't press him. I just held on to that sentence. Later that night, after everyone was asleep, I stayed up. I sat in the living room, lights off. Around midnight, I heard her whispering in the kitchen. I got up and saw her on the phone. She didn't know I was watching. Her voice was soft but sharp. It didn't sound like she was talking to a friend. She looked nervous, kept checking the door. When she saw me, she jumped. She ended the call quickly and said it was her cousin. I asked why she was talking so late. She said it was about family stuff and went straight to bed. I didn't argue. I just stood there in the kitchen, staring at her phone on the counter. Every night after that, I noticed the same pattern. When she thought I was asleep, she would sneak out of bed and take calls in another room. I didn't know who she was talking to, but I knew it wasn't her cousin. Each day, my unease grew. I couldn't look at her the same way. I started questioning everything. Every smile, every hug, every word. My son was scared of someone. She was hiding something. And I was beginning to fear that the woman I trusted wasn't who I thought she was. I wasn't sure what I would find, but I knew I had to keep digging. I had to know the truth, for my son's sake. One afternoon, while my wife was out buying groceries, I sat on the couch staring at her phone on the coffee table. It was unlocked. She must have forgotten to take it or assumed I wouldn't touch it. I hesitated. I knew going through her phone would cross a line. But after everything, the strange phone calls, the way our son spoke about Mommy's friend, the burn that didn't match the story, I couldn't ignore my gut anymore. I opened her messages. Most of it looked normal. Group chats, family texts, nothing unusual. But then I saw a string of messages that had no contact name, just a letter. See. I clicked on the thread. My heart started beating faster as I read. They weren't romantic exactly, but they were too familiar, too personal. There were messages about meeting when he's at work, about keeping it quiet, and one that said, "He doesn't suspect anything." My stomach turned. There were also photos, blurry selfies, taken inside our house. At times I wasn't home. I checked the call log. C had called her multiple times over the past month, always late at night or during my work hours. I didn't recognize the number, but the pattern was clear. When she came home, I tried to stay calm. I asked her directly, "Who is C?" She froze. For a second, just 1 second, her face gave something away. Panic, maybe guilt. Then she recovered. "What are you talking about?" I told her I saw the messages. She got angry fast. Said I was invading her privacy, said I was paranoid, that I was making things up. "You've been acting weird since the hospital," she said. "Do you think I'd hurt our child? Now you're making up affairs." I didn't yell. I didn't fight. I just watched her talk, watched how quickly she turned things around. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing. I kept hearing my son's quiet voice, asking about her friend. I decided I needed to know more, and I needed proof. The next day, while she took our son to the park, I installed small cameras in the living room and the hallway. Nothing fancy, just simple motion-activated cameras that I could check from my phone. I placed one near the front door and another facing the kitchen. I didn't tell anyone, not even my closest friend. I felt like I was entering a different world, one where trust no longer existed. For a few days, nothing happened. She acted like everything was normal, laughing during dinner, scrolling on her phone, brushing our son's hair before bed. But the camera footage told a different story. Late at night, after I'd fall asleep, she'd get up and move around the house. Once, she opened the front door, peeked outside, and then closed it quickly. Another time, she was in the kitchen whispering into her phone, pacing back and forth. The most disturbing clip came a week later. A man, tall, wearing a hoodie, came to the door. She let him in. They stood in the hallway talking quietly. Then she walked him back out. I watched it again and again. I didn't recognize him. My son was asleep in the next room. That was the moment everything became real. This wasn't just stress. This wasn't about privacy or paranoia. There was something going on, something dangerous, and I was done guessing. I had to protect my son. I had to get to the truth, and I had to do it fast. One night after work, I sat on the couch with my phone, scrolling through the camera footage like I had been doing for days. Most of the clips were boring, just the living room, quiet, empty. Then I found a clip that made my chest tighten. It started with my wife and our son in the kitchen. He was asking for something, juice, I think. She snapped at him. Not just annoyed, but harsh, like she'd completely lost patience. He flinched and stepped back. Then she grabbed his arm and pulled him roughly away from the counter. It wasn't just a quick tug. It was aggressive. My hands clenched as I watched. The worst part, he didn't cry. He just lowered his head like he was used to it. I kept watching. Over the next few days, more clips showed the same pattern. She was sweet when she noticed the camera, smiling, hugging him, asking about his toys. But the second she thought no one was watching, her tone changed. Cold, sharp, distant. There was no warmth in her voice. No kindness in her touch. One night, something new appeared. While I was at work, a man came to the door. The same one from before, the tall guy in the hoodie. My wife let him in. They didn't go far into the house. They stood in the hallway, whispering, checking their phones, laughing quietly. My son was asleep just a few feet away. I watched it again and again, unable to breathe. This wasn't just cheating. It was deception layered on top of cruelty. She was faking everything. The love, the smiles, the calm mother routine. It was all for show. I broke down that night. I went to the bathroom and cried silently, biting down on a towel so my son wouldn't hear. I felt sick with anger, heartbreak, and guilt. I had trusted her. I had left my son alone with her so many times, and she had treated him like this behind my back. But I couldn't lose control. I couldn't confront her yet. I needed proof. Real proof. Enough that no one could argue with it. I started saving the clips, transferring them to a hidden drive, labeling each one, keeping notes, dates, times, what was said, what was done. Every evening after work, I checked the footage like clockwork, and each day, my collection of evidence grew. It wasn't just for me anymore. It was for my son, for the authorities, for whoever needed to see the truth. I didn't know what I'd do next, but I knew one thing for sure. She wouldn't get away with it. I waited until the house was quiet. My son was asleep in his room. My wife was in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone like nothing was wrong. I walked in, sat down across from her, and placed a small USB drive on the table. She glanced at it, then at me. "What's that?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse her. I simply said, "I've been recording everything." Her face went pale. She didn't speak right away. I could see the shift, the calm mask slipping. She swallowed hard and reached for the drive, but I moved it away. "I've seen it all," I said. "The way you treat him when you think no one's watching. The late-night visits. The man you keep bringing into our home." Silence. Heavy, thick silence. Then she started to cry. Not loud sobs, just quiet, broken weeping. She covered her face and mumbled, "I didn't mean to hurt him. I didn't. I was just overwhelmed." I stayed still, waiting. She looked up at me with red eyes. "See, as someone I knew before you. I wasn't supposed to talk to him again, but he found me. He made me feel seen again. I've been tired, lost. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't react. I just listened. I wanted her to keep talking, to admit everything. I didn't plan for it to happen like this," she said. "I felt trapped. Stuck. I didn't want to hurt anyone. It just got out of control." I asked one question. "Did you ever think about our son?" She didn't answer. I stood up, walked to the hallway, and made 2 calls. First to the police, then to Child Protection Services. I didn't explain it to her. I didn't need to. When the officers arrived, everything turned to chaos. My son woke up, frightened by the noise. I held him while they asked questions. My wife tried to argue, saying I was twisting everything, that it was all just misunderstandings. But I had the footage, the records, the truth. They led her outside. She didn't scream or fight. She just kept crying, repeating that she was sorry, that she didn't mean it, that it wasn't what it looked like. But it was. The house felt cold after they left. The silence was different, no longer tense, just empty. My son clung to me, asking why Mommy had to go. I told him she needed help, and that he was safe now. I didn't say more. That night, I sat by his bed watching him sleep. So small, so innocent, and I realized the woman I thought I knew had been gone for a long time. After my wife was removed from the house, I thought things would get easier. I thought the truth would speak for itself. But I was wrong. The investigation started the next morning. Police came back, this time with a social worker. They asked a lot of questions, some about my wife, but many about me. How often I worked, who usually took care of our son, whether I'd ever lost my temper. I answered everything honestly, but I could feel it. They weren't sure who to trust yet. A few days later, my wife got a lawyer. I wasn't surprised, but what did surprise me was the story they started to build. Suddenly, I was the bad guy, the controlling husband, the one who worked long hours and pushed her to the edge. They said I was setting her up, that I had twisted things to take the child away from her. Her lawyer called it a smear campaign by a bitter spouse. It felt like a punch to the chest. I had video proof. I had timestamps, records, even the doctor's concerns from the hospital. But still, the process dragged on. Social services said they needed to remain neutral. They were polite but distant. "We can't take sides," they said. Meanwhile, I was fighting for custody. I had to fill out stacks of paperwork, sit through interviews, allow strangers into my home to observe how I parented. Every time I looked at my son, I was reminded of why I had to keep going. He depended on me now more than ever. But then I learned something I wasn't ready for. While digging through old records with my lawyer, we discovered that my wife had a sealed file from years before we met. A prior CPS case. A report involving another man. Another child. The details were limited, but what we could see painted a dark picture. Neglect, unstable relationships, and a temporary custody removal. She had kept all of it hidden. It never came up during our marriage. Never once did she mention any part of that past. That's when everything shifted for me. This wasn't a one-time breakdown. This wasn't about stress or depression. This was a pattern. A long, buried pattern of behavior that I had never seen because I never thought to look. And now, I wasn't just trying to protect my son from harm. I was trying to shield him from a history that could have destroyed us both. The court battle was far from over, but I was no longer just reacting. I was ready to fight, not out of anger, but out of fear. Fear that if I didn't win, my son would fall right back into the shadows I had just pulled him out of. While preparing for court, I asked my lawyer to look deeper into my wife's sealed CPS history. I needed to understand what she had been hiding. What we found changed everything. See, the man she had been secretly meeting wasn't just an old friend. He was her ex. Not just an ex-boyfriend, but a man with a record, multiple arrests for assault, including domestic violence. He had once been under investigation for child endangerment. Suddenly, my son's fear of mommy's friend made terrifying sense. She hadn't just reconnected with someone from her past. She had hidden a violent man in our home. She let him near our child. And she never told me who he really was. We dug deeper and found that the previous CPS case, the one sealed before we married, had been linked to him. Years ago, she'd lost custody of a daughter for several months. That child had been removed due to unsafe living conditions and suspected abuse. The name C was all over the file. I couldn't believe it. She had erased an entire chapter of her life before I came into it. And she had done it so cleanly, so carefully, that I never saw the warning sign. Not until it was almost too late. This wasn't about a one-time mistake or a failing marriage. This was a cycle. She had lived this way before. She had brought danger into her home, lied about it, and risked a child's safety. And now she had done it again with me, with our son. I started to replay every moment from the past year. The odd bruises. The strange phone calls. The way she made me feel guilty for asking questions. It wasn't just manipulation. It was control. She had kept me blind while slowly pulling both me and my son into the same darkness she had created once before. The realization hit hard. I had never been in control. I had been a part of her cover. Another chapter in a story that had played out before, just with different names and faces. Now it all made sense. Why she reacted the way she did when I confronted her. Why she cried but never denied the truth. She had done this before. She just never thought I'd find out. But I had. And now I knew exactly what I was fighting against. It wasn't just for custody anymore. It was to break a pattern. To make sure my son didn't grow up caught in a world built on secrets, fear, and quiet pain. He deserved better. And for the first time, I saw clearly how close we had come to losing everything. Once I understood the full picture, who C really was, what my wife had hidden, and how deep the past went, I knew I couldn't stop at just winning custody. I had to make sure none of it could happen again, to anyone. In court, I presented everything. The footage, the messages, the sealed CPS report we had uncovered. The judge didn't need long. I was granted full custody of my son. My wife was denied all visitation, not even supervised. The court saw what I saw. She wasn't just unstable, she was dangerous. But I didn't stop there. I took what we found about C to Child Protective Services. His history, the connection to multiple reports, the old CPS case with my wife, everything. At first, they were hesitant. The system moved slowly, cautiously. But once they saw the pattern, once they saw that his name had come up in more than one sealed report, things changed. A new investigation began, not just into him, but into a web of cases that had been buried or dismissed. One after another, families came forward. Victims who had never been believed. Parents who had tried to speak out, but had no proof. With my help, CPS reopened several files. Some of those children were no longer even in the system, but the damage had been done years ago, and now, it was finally being acknowledged. Justice didn't come fast. But it came. I never wanted revenge in the usual sense. I didn't want anyone to suffer just because I had. What I wanted was truth and safety. For my son. For the others. For anyone who had been forced to stay silent. In the end, my voice helped others find theirs. That was enough for me. After gaining full custody, I focused entirely on my son's healing. He began therapy, and over time, the fear in his eyes faded. We built a new life, quiet, simple, safe. I stayed close, made him feel secure, and gave him back his childhood. We moved to a smaller place, just the two of us. No chaos. No secrets. Just peace. He started smiling again, sleeping without fear. That was everything to me. I shared our story because too many people are still living in silence. Too many kids are hurt behind closed doors. If my story can help even one person recognize the signs or take action, then it's worth it. You don't need to wait for bruises to know something's wrong. Trust your instincts. Look closer. Ask questions. If this story helped you see things differently, please like, share, and subscribe. You might save a child without even knowing it. Thank you for watching.